Okay, we are live.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the City of DuPont Tree Advisory Commission for Monday, August 12th at 5:01 p.m. Could I have a roll call, please?
Chair Cheney,
Present.
Commissioner Shakot,
Yes,
Commissioner Clark.
present, yeah.
I don't see her online and she had written us that she would try to join if she could. So,
Yes.
okay. Commissioner King? Here. And Commissioner Sanish? Here. Great, thank you.
So do you need a motion excusing her or just continue on with presumption that she'll call in as soon as she can?
Why don't we go ahead and excuse her, and then if she's able to join, that would be great.
Okay. Could I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Clark?
So moved.
So move.
I have it moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is public comments. I see there was no one here live in person to make any public comments. Is there anyone online or have any written comments been?
There have been no written comments and there's no one online.
Thank you very much. Next is approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda if there are no suggested edits?
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have the agenda approved 4-0. Next is approval of the minutes from last meeting. They looked fairly accurate to me. Is there any, there's
Oh.
no,
Only correction I see is the spelling of my name.
oh,
There's a C in there.
that's
Under
a
roll call.
S-A-C-Y?
SAYNISCH.
Oh, S-C-H.
Not a biggie, not a showstopper.
Then with that one correction, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Here, I'll sign it real quick. Next is unfinished business, the farmer's market. So I think I was the first one at the second market. I talked to about 12 to 15 people. As I recall, 3 of them signed up on the sheet. And Kelsey's little fold-out board was I'm glad that she got that to us because having little 3-dimensional pieces was very helpful to have something to talk about that was more engaging than flat paper. And I did have my little baby tree, which I don't have with me today. But yeah, so it went pretty well for the one I did. If anybody else would like to discuss.
Yeah, actually, I had a good day, actually. I met a lot of people there. And one thing I noticed, there are a lot of people who stopped by and they were genuinely interested in knowing about trees. And I could engage quite a few people. The only thing is they were very reluctant to sign the thing, And I tried a little bit to get someone, and they said we get so many emails, so we'd rather not. But, the enthusiasm for for the trees in DuPont, I think it was there. I could sense it. But I must admit, Kelsey's chart was very actually helpful in pointing out, and they really admired the layout and everything.
Yeah.
And one of them actually told me if she can, she will try to make one of this for her school, so that was nice. So it was a positive experience for me also.
Cool.
And I did the last two farmers markets and I had a lot of engagements, I thought, and I liked your idea of bringing trees, so I brought some native, I brought a black hawthorn, some birches, baby birches, and Metasequoia glyptostroboides, which was native here 20 million years ago, but extinct now. But the kids like that, so I tried to draw the parallel between today's native trees and with climate change and things happen.
Great.
But the kids especially like that story, and that particular tree is the state fossil of Oregon. And but like I said, it used to grow here, but lots of exchanges with people, and one young man stopped by who's a master arborist and expressed an interest in joining the commission at some point. So we exchanged contact information, and I passed that along to Barb and Janet, and to you if you ever.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I didn't send it to the wrong email address, you would have sent it to. But
No, and so my understanding is he's got quite the qualification.
the street tree specialist. He was in Oregon, and he's just been hired by the city of Tacoma as their street tree guy. So
Living here?
he's living in DuPont. So he just moved in. Today was his first day on the job in Tacoma. So anyway, so he's a good one, and I offered to step down to make room for him because he's eminently qualified. If he decides he wants to put forward an application, he would be excellent. Be an excellent addition to the commission.
And then I know you didn't do a table break it, but did you have anything to?
Just, it was interesting. I just stood with Carol for a few minutes and people did come by and they were very interested in trees. And I like that we had the return contact form. I think I'd add a column onto it that would say the topic so that we know what topics coming up over and over again. Would have been nice data to have. So I don't know who's calling all those people back.
Well, we've returned in the sheet, so.
Okay.
But
But,
yeah, who is
yeah.
that?
I don't know. So.
So
um,
does the town staff currently have that sheet, or is it? Okay, great. Right, yeah. So I think to me, the idea is when we were trying to do this planting in the fall of the
Mhm.
overstock, and it be, just to put the word out, as a special invitation to them to come and volunteer when we have that opportunity.
I was liking the special invitation idea to get them maybe even to a tree town hall thing, like, a by
Right,
name
yeah.
invite.
But at first, we should be receptive to the reason they signed in the first place, and most of them had a beef. So before we ask anything
yeah?
of them, we should contact them and hear what they have to say, at least the ones I talked to. Everybody was polite, but they had genuine concerns
Oh,
that they felt strongly enough to put their name in their email.
yeah, okay. Because most of, I didn't encounter anyone that had like strong, serious concerns. They were mostly enthusiastic about.
Oh, they're
Great.
all enthusiastic, but
Right.
they're wrong tree, wrong place issues and things like
Okay.
that, and just questions about what they can plant and not plant.
Right.
And, where the city supersedes anything that the Northwest Landing might, so there was a lot of
Right.
overlap questions like that.
Yes.
That they
yeah.
were asking. I'm just saying that it would be great to invite them to do stuff, but we first should address their concerns. Before we ask
So
anything of
that's
them.
Good point.
really encouraging to hear all of this. And do we have, a couple of things came to mind listening to this discussion. Do we have the tree planting list available for people that are asking, the right tree, right place? I don't remember, did we make copies of that to hand out?
Well, I don't have this assortment here. Was it in that?
Did we have?
Was it in that group?
We didn't have it as part of a
Yeah,
handout
I'm
for.
wondering if we should have a handout that may help people when they're curious about
Right.
like, what tree should I plant?
yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I think goes with that is the refined policy document from the city that says what the city's requirements are in addition to, these are the approved trees and these are
Mhm.
not, that's just one piece of it. I think we need to get that kind of whole picture.
Mhm.
And that's different from
Right.
Northwest Landing where they require you to get permission to plant any tree.
Right,
As far as
yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand, even in your backyard, you have to.
So to stay focused on the farmer's market, kind of wrap that topic up, because I think this will come up in our next topic as well, is there, so was Commissioner Clark he bowed out on the 25th, right? Because she was out of town? Or was
She and I were gonna switch next week, I think.
Oh, so
I think next week is the week.
I've got her signed up for next week, or this week, the 15th.
Yeah, this coming week, I think she and I flipped and then she'll take the last one in August. And then I think
There's a September one too.
So you were gonna do this week?
this week and the following week.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And then I don't know about September.
There's a September 5th or 6th, whatever. that
Okay,
too.
so I've got Commissioner King doing August 15th and 22nd, and Commissioner Clark probably August 29th, and then September 5th is still open. And I'll send this out as an email so everyone's got it and tracking later. Okay, thank you. I'd like to move on from the farmer's market if we can. Objections? Okay, we'll move on to updates to the 2017 tree care guidelines. And I took a brief look at it online before looking at it here right now. And overall, it seemed like you guys did a great job of highlighting the significant things to update. And there was one like link in addition to the one that you guys found that was broken. It was one for pruning. It was just one of the ones that I looked at in the prune. But
They all work for us, so I.
Okay. Oh, so the one to prune went someplace, but it didn't go to it. It went to an Upgrade Foundation page, but it wasn't specifically about
Oh,
pruning. So, okay, so I need to shut up and you can talk about it.
So, Kelsey and I sat down and we went through all of our comments for the last 18 months
Wow.
on the tree care guide. And, you know, the basic philosophies was removing specificities of names, and move to positions, to, try and align, better the outline. Like when I tried to map the outline of the document, it was a little bit fuzzy, so we were trying to sort of straighten that out. We didn't know if we wanted to keep I don't know if now is when we want to talk about our mission statement. And we did want to move it up front in the document. We checked all the links and we found that one and maybe the other one that you found. What else? When I was talking to Kelsey about it was how we came up to, so you have this grid that Barb passed out. And so I feel like there needs to be some kind of infographic, and this is not a professional infographic, this is our brainstorming, that explains who do you go to for what. So instead of having that list of names, I would put it on an infographic and say, you got a question about trees in general, Public Works, city trees, Public Works. Here's the ROA. And then the other thing that I was just talking to Barb about is I then went through and looked at every DMC and guideline that we have mentioned in the last 18 months. And I feel like those source documents could be listed in the bullets of the graphic. But I do think, just like the question at the farmer's market, some were very, very forward in the document that we put, what kind of a tree is it and what governs that tree in that space. And it can be just this general as well, but it gives you an idea that it's not just, some trees are not just your trees.
Exactly.
And it does it very quickly. So again, this is not a final document or anything. It was the brainstorming document that I started as I was trying to explain to Kelsey why the front of the document of the tree guidelines wasn't kind of working for me. And I think this just makes it really clear, and it's how my brain operates. I don't know. I would like to know right up front, who am I going to get what information? So then we went back and we edited out things that might be first settler kind of things. We kind of took those things out. Let's see, what else do we do? We left the body of all the tree maintenance mechanic stuff as it was, because that's the primary purpose of the manual. And then the last section is where you get into permitting and where you really want to, again, know who do I call, where do I get the permit document? The highlights, okay, she did put in there, the link didn't work on the permit application. And so I think having when we have a hot link like that, to also have the nomenclature of where you're looking for it and not just the hot, it's DMC, and
Yeah.
then the hot link, so that if it doesn't work, you can put in the search in our website and get the accurate.
Yes.
So that's one change. Trees whose roots, I wasn't sure. We're getting into sidewalk territory. I didn't mention anything, but it may be, and it comes down to that responsibilities page again. Did we want to put stuff in there about root pruning, contact somebody about root pruning as soon as you notice it? Is there a way for us to head this stuff off? So I thought that could be expanded in the maintenance thing or have a direction of where to go. And I'm saying that even though I'm the person that wanted this to just, I want to focus on documents that have teeth. But I think it is important for it to be easy for people to know where to go to get the information they need. So so maintenance is a part of this document, but I also think where to go to get information should
Right,
be
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think-
quickly. So,
And it makes it, so most of the tree care stuff is out there and it's universal. But to make this city of DuPont to have, and because there is these overlapping responsibilities, I think.
yeah, on
really
the
would
chart, I
be-
think you could have the ROA, do you put a link to the ROA handbook? I don't know. Because it changes as well over time. I'm fine with putting links in as long as you say see the ROA
Right,
handbook
yeah.
first and then have the link afterwards, or a little box to click on the link so that you know where to go to find what. And that, here would be the Northwest Landing phone number to access, but definitely who are they? And when do you go talk to them? So this could be clearer, and I'm not sure we covered, again, I was just using this as a vehicle to explain it to Kelsey, and then we're like, wow, we should just put this in because we need it. If city strip parks, open space, there are other types of tree governed areas like shoreline, critical areas. And so I don't know how far we want to go on the city side. Anyway, that's the long and the short of it. So,
Thank thank you very much.
Lot of
Just,
work.
Yeah, wonderful work. I like the concept of having this as a
Yeah.
as
Would
a
it
way
help with the
to
farmer's market for sure.
as a way to guide people that don't know the appropriate place for to to see what their responsibilities are versus the other organization's responsibilities. And good job. Keep it up. I'm looking forward to version 2. Do you need help?
I think that may be talking to you. I'm not sure what we do with this next. I know, I could see some things right away. I forgot like protected trees. That goes at the very top under trees, and it has a different pathway like the heritage trees. Would be protected trees, and I think that would be a better name up there, but somehow I think we probably need some professional input on this. Unless it's not helpful, and so that I don't know from the city side. On the citizen side, it's helpful.
Yeah, so does the city have any comments this time?
Well, I think this is great. Was just processing what you said about, the trees, when we start this out with heritage trees or protected trees, that very first box.
How to do
it. Yeah.
They either jet out to a separate path.
Mhm.
They either jet out on a separate path, like this overarches, it would trump all this here. You'd have to go here for this. It's a first question when you're dealing with a tree, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Right.
like when we're setting up our permitting template for workflows, because we're setting these workflows up in our permit template, it's kind of this, the question is, really needs to start off with, okay, so you have a tree, what, is this, we need to have people know that how not all trees are considered equal in the tree world here, right? So we do have to find a way to say like, but people aren't going to know if they have a heritage tree or a protected tree. So,
Sorry,
yeah.
so I kind of just glossed over the heritage tree thing there and just look at this as a concept sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And the two big, right, yes, so the heritage tree is kind of a separate thing.
And I think
And I
instead,
think when you have a problem with the tree, the first question is it on city property or private property? Who owns it, right?
Mhm.
And then if it's on the city property, well, is it a street tree or is it a park or is it just an open space?
Yeah.
Or does that matter?
I don't think that matters.
Oh, it matters.
Policy.
I think
Right?
that,
And then if it's on private property, is it big enough that it's one of the protected specimen trees
mm-hmm,
or not? Is it a
Mhm.
heritage tree or is it just some other tree? And so,
right.
yeah, so
There is a house, I know it's not the only one, but there is a house over here that has white oaks in the front garden, and that's where I wasn't sure what, what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, our ordinance talks about how these are, we have these trees with this criteria that are protected from being removed. It doesn't, well, we have a very bad ordinance, so it doesn't actually go into talking about whether it's private, private land or public land, but I've always interpreted that to mean anywhere, if there is a tree that fits this protected criteria, then we would, we would not want that tree removed. So back to like the city, if it's a city tree, city property tree, I don't think it matters in terms of, for the person to know it's whether or not it's, city park or open space. I think it's helpful for the city staff to know what it is that we need to go, but I don't know that that's something that if someone has a question or a concern about a tree that is on city property regardless. I think what's helpful in this though is to let people know that that if it's a city, a street tree, city strip tree, then they would need to talk to the city about it. And sometimes that's where there's a lot of confusion there. I don't think people are terribly confused about trees that are in the open space tracks or in parks,
I think there is a confusion about pocket parks
Oh.
and ROA parks.
Yeah.
And and that's why I think you do need the park bullet and showing them. We also have they're not parks, they are open space, for instance, on my street that has trees. I wouldn't call the city, I should call the ROA about it, but until you know to ask the question, so that's, again, this was a teaching tool, so that's
Yeah.
why it may have too much detail.
Well, no, I mean, there's just so many facets to this when, because you're right. I mean, is the person's, so if they're not going to know whether or not one of those pocket parks is the city or the ROA necessarily, right? So, no. And,
Most people don't even understand that between the sidewalk and the curb
right,
is their responsibility.
right.
Just from talking to people at the farmer's market, they're clueless about it, most of them.
I feel like this is a really, really good and important tool, and I feel like we maybe want to put it on the next agenda when we can really spend some time developing what this should be. I mean, I think this is an amazing first, crack at it.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think I think as a group collectively, we're going to want to, we're going to really want to spend about, 15, 20 minutes as an agenda item and really mark this up and make it something that is gonna hopefully fulfill what, its purpose. And which is to help people know who to call, how to consider, like, I guess that's where we really want this to be a tool for people to understand who to call about a tree, right?
Definitely.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I would, encourage
think we
you
can do
to put
that.
it on the next agenda and then we keep working on this.
And then on the rest of the document, so that if this worked, it would replace I think we already took it out, the list of names. Obviously the table of contents, I would take out the pages on there. So that was why that's all highlighted, because it'll change whenever you're downloading it off I don't know, just,
Well, if it's published as a PDF, the page number.
yeah. And that's it really. The yellow areas were the areas of question. And so I don't know if we want to tackle the yellow areas today or do that.
I think you've introduced us to the changes. We've kind of discussed and seen, yes, there's some work to do that's very city specific. And we can do more of that next time. And I think refining this is a great place to start to get the concept laid out. Yeah. So anybody else has anything different?
I agree that if you distill, that's the distillation of it. So if
Yeah.
you get that, then
To get
everything will
this
flow once you get that.
Fleshed out, so we understand where,
Exactly.
how to guide a person and then we can get it down on paper and then communicate it to.
That was a brilliant way to introduce that, by the way.
Okay, so I'm gonna, we'll definitely have that as a main item for our next meeting. if we want to move, if we want to move along to, the next item on the agenda is, public input on, the nursery inventory. So in your packet is, this page at the end of and it was just something I wrote to, initiate this conversation, with the public, to let them know that there are these excess trees from, the municipal nursery. At our last meeting, those of us that were here and engaged, we kind of talked about how, it's not very cost effective for the city to run its own nursery. And so that we probably should, try and distribute all these trees and cease, nursery operations because we don't have grant funding for it anymore. And so this was the wording that I came up with as a first draft. And I think the city would prefer, an email response submission, but I did draft it as a Google form to be submitted, that way.
Alex, did you cross-check to make sure the HOA would allow these?
I,
The encouragement of people to plant these in their yards, because the HOA may smack that down.
right, I did not, like. So I don't think I highly suspect the HOA has very particular rules for particular places,
They do.
and it would be impossible to address all those particularities.
I mean, about the part about
Would be
planting in
for-
your yard.
Yeah. So if a person wants to plant it in their yard, then
They have to ask the
they
HOA.
have to get permission from the HOA.
I see your point.
I can't do that for them.
Did we ever ask the HOA if they wanted them for the pocket parks?
And then the other thing, the previous comments I got from Steve were about not making this look like giving away trees.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm.
so that's. I tried to do that. Is it good enough? Do we need another review before it goes from somebody else in the city staff to have it published, or what other comments are there?
I think I dropped the ball and I didn't ever go back to Gordon and ask him and, our finance director, if like, are we gifting anything public away? Let me make sure that I check with them, because I was supposed
Right.
to do that and I didn't. But, I think if we can, adopt these trees out, which is kind of what you're, it's
Right, yeah.
kind of
so
an
that's-
adopt a tree program.
It's just if, like when I hear adopt a tree, I think,
Adopt someone that's already planted.
yes, the
Yeah.
tree's already planted somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not on my property.
That's
I'm
true.
Just watering it and
Rehome a
it.
tree.
maintenance,
How about
And so
rehoming? I'm all
that's,
into animal rehoming.
right? So I mean, I think it comes down to what's the,
Rescue?
well, what's the city, right? So if it's a tree going from the nursery into the city's property and it's someplace where, the city can't support the watering of it or the care of it for that first year,
Right.
then that's adopting a tree. But if it's, if the tree is available to be planted
Yeah.
by a homeowner where that homeowner wants it in their yard, subject to the HOA approval, then
Mm-hmm.
me as a layperson, that's not adoption. But a bureaucrat could say, no, that's adoption. It's still the city's tree. And I would say, right on, let's go. So
Yeah.
it's just,
I don't remember how many we have. Does anybody remember how many we actually have?
Quite a few.
I
40?
I don't know, there were quite a.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
But they were
My
big.
favorite
yeah.
piece of paper.
How big a hole would that require? That would be an
So
enormous
it's on the order of 100,
100 trees.
close to,
Yeah.
I don't think it's exceeding 100.
I mean, it may be as simple as just sort of doing a raffle or something, like donate. I don't know. I'm sure we can get around it, but I gotta make sure that yeah.
You're gonna need.
These were acceptable or not acceptable street trees, because I haven't been up there yet, but people have told me that every tree up on Swan Loop is dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
because
the-
once we said you didn't have to water your city strip, all these baby trees, you know, they couldn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all dead. And I've heard that from 2 or 3 people now.
So
And one of the people who signed on the list talked about dead trees in their area on that.
Part of me is like, should we?
should we,
Well, it's new information. That was new information. I mean, I've seen dotted around town, but not an entire street. And it makes me wonder if, although these are maybe too big already to be street trees.
They may be, I mean, we'd have to, I think we need to go back to what Kevin McFarland told us in terms of there was a pretty narrow list of trees that are
Right.
okay to plant in those little narrow
You're gonna need a
strips, right?
backhoe for
So-
this because of
Yeah.
the ball is gonna be so big.
so
Yeah.
my note here has, of those that are on the inventory from March 2nd, 2024, there's 14 white ash that are listed as prohibited.
Uh-oh,
Mhm.
And
That's
so
because-
prohibited for a street
Mhm.
tree,
okay.
Is that because of the ash borer situation?
I believe so. And then 2 of them are listed as approved for street tree use.
I know the hornbeam.
American hornbeam and trident maple.
Mhm. Those are okay for street trees?
Yeah.
And together, so there's, on this inventory, the trident maple had 43 of them and 19 American hornbeam.
Mm.
So that's like 60 available. So yeah, if there are dead street trees out there, somebody ought to knock on some doors and say, hey, your replacement tree is here in the city nursery.
And he had good things to say about the hornbeams, especially that day we walked with him, yeah.
So, and then I did just drive by on the way here and I spotted probably 6 dead trees at least.
This is, you know, my part when I do the farmer's market will be about watering.
Right.
It's just hard to watch, you know, it's just how the brain works. Oh, I don't need to water my city strip, so now I'm not gonna grow grass on it, or, you know, there's absolutely no care taken of it at all. Whereas before, everybody believed they had to look after the city strip. And somewhere in the past 10 years while I was gone, it was determined that it wasn't covered by the ROA.
Hmm.
And that changed when I came back, I was like, what is happening? But now the trees are dying after years of no water, no feeding, no care. And that was a mental shift that occurred. And I don't know how it happened, but that was the message I got when I came back from Europe was, oh, no, we don't have to look after this anymore.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
You know, just, I go to the DuPont Community Garden and then I glance at the trees over there. They're just there. Actually, you know, they are in very bad condition right now. You know, and my other question is, you know, we talk about people adopting a tree, you know. I don't know how many people have that big yard or, you know, something. You think they will plant these trees in their yard? I mean, in DuPont, there are not many big yards.
That's true. You're right about that. There aren't many.
And then,
Yeah.
you know, basically, they have to take care of those. The way I look at those trees, they really need, when somebody adopts it, it really requires uh, tender loving care,
Right.
you know, for some time. So that's just my thoughts, when we put these out to people, and if somebody is really wants to have it, then we need to tell him that,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then,
So when I envisioned like this message being able to go out, like, and the bits and bytes be communicated from the city that says, hey, these trees are available. And at the end, it kind of describes the situation. It says, if you can take possession and plant one of these in your yard, please let us know. And then we can communicate with them
I mean, do we have an,
details, but it also says other suggestions are welcome. Because it's recognizing that most yards probably aren't in a state to support, an additional tree in the yard. Some may, some might not,
But
probably most don't.
The root ball itself will be
Yeah.
bigger than a lot of yards.
I do not want, yeah,
At
I
least
don't want.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah,
tiny
yeah.
yard.
The problem is many properties are rental properties. If somebody take possession and puts it in his rental property, then,
Yeah, that's
and,
not.
and believe
not
me,
good.
I've seen some homes where the trees which they have planted themselves are growing wild and they don't even take care of them.
Mhm.
I believe those are rental properties, but I'm just guessing,
But that's a good point. We should have a disclaimer on here somehow, in tiny little print.
Yeah.
Exempting us from any legal responsibility about, if anybody splashes back on
Yeah.
us for giving advice
So-
or.
My point is, if somebody is really eager to take a plan,
Yeah.
then I think we need to say that, it's, if you have a rental property, do not put it in the rental property. There's something to suggest that
It
you have to
says,
take care of them. Because
No.
the homeowner would take care of the plant, if he has adopted it and if he's living there.
Oh, like a little biography and a little, you sign on, your
So
tree's
I'm
name
sorry to
is
say that,
George
but-
and you're responsible.
But I have
for-
seen some trees going totally wild in some yards.
Yeah. Well,
They
your
become more a
point,
problem than anything.
Carol's just making me remember, so when I was on the city council was the great cherry tree disaster of the historic village.
Oh.
And the trees were gifted as part of a program by the city, and then they immediately that's what's wrong with the sidewalks over there. And then all of the residents, and they were the ones that volunteered to take the trees, wanted the city to pay to
Right.
Exactly.
remove them.
We need
And
a disclaimer.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is a really a good start for a write-up too. And I think that, just figuring out how, what the legal path of being able to give a tree or, for to people that do have room, that do want to plant and take care of a tree is good, it's one avenue. The other is to try to figure out where we need to replace street trees and try to figure out how that can happen. So it's like this, several prongs here that we have to try to get done. But I think that this one is, good. And let me just check in with, the bureaucracy to make sure that, if there needs to be a disclaimer, we need to make sure that people understand that the property owner has to approve this tree, and the city's not going to be liable for anything, and that there needs to be some sort of making sure that however that transaction occurs isn't considered a gifting of public property to somebody. So there's just a few little
And reminding them
bugs.
to check with the HOA too, even though it's not our purview to do that, but
Yeah,
it would be a service to them if we just remind them.
absolutely. And then make sure that people understand that they would have to figure out how to get the tree move the tree, plant the tree, so that we don't have any expectations that the city is gonna do it. And otherwise, I mean, just, I think it's a great tactic to try to get, I mean, heck, even if we get 1 or 2 or 3 trees
Mhm.
planted, that's 3 trees, right?
True.
So,
Can I ask, Mohammed, you said the trees are not in a very good condition right now in the nursery. Is that,
Sorry.
Mohammed, you said the trees in the nursery are not in very good condition when you saw them? They looked okay last year when I saw them. Is there a
I
problem?
didn't get you, I'm sorry.
The nursery trees, are they in bad condition? You
Yes.
mentioned that?
Yes.
Last year when I saw them, they were okay. They have a drip irrigation. So what's wrong with them now?
You know, just, I didn't go very closer and inspected each one of them. But it seemed to me, that it looked like somebody had just deserted them.
So not enough water, not enough.
Some of them looked very bad, so probably not. Their leaves are, turning yellow. But again, the weather is changing.
Yeah.
But they definitely look not in good shape because I've been seeing them all along because that's where I walk, and I just glance around them and and I can go and give you a better
Okay,
report.
I was just curious.
If
'cause the
you
last
want,
time I
because
saw
I
them-
go there all the time. I'm in the community garden,
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
So next time I'll tell you,
Okay.
bring,
well, I
I'll
just
bring the
want,
information and give you more which ones are bad and all that. I can do that.
I just wondered if maybe the city needed to be alerted to check on them or something, because they may not
Sure.
always look in there, so. If there's a problem with the maintenance of the trees before we take any other actions. about it.
mhm.
So the takeaway then on this is, we need more, we need the specific legal language that the city is gonna require.
And I,
So
yeah, and I,
have that, then we can just add that in
yeah.
and then move forward with it.
Do we have this as a Word document, don't we? What you drafted here?
Yes,
Okay.
as well.
Okay, well, what we can do maybe is put this on next agendas unfinished, and then I'll do some red lines. So it'll be in the packet with maybe some
Okay.
suggested edits.
Yeah, that'd be great
Yeah.
to get the,
Mm-hmm.
right, and just, there's some issues there, but tree giveaways have been happening in many other municipalities in the region for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is
Probably not.
really that hard. It's just a matter of somebody looking in the book and saying, oh yeah, okay.
Are other cities giving away trees, you said? Other municipalities giving away trees?
There was like a tree giveaway in Tacoma
Really?
is the, I don't know. I don't think I didn't see a county one, but I know there was one in Tacoma, Grit City Trees. You just fill out your information and you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sponsored, it was,
Maybe there's some loophole because it's sponsored by
sure.
somebody.
yeah,
but,
we'll figure it out. I'm
But,
sure
but
it's,
this was sponsored, whatever the grant funding agency was
Yeah.
sponsor in a
Mhm.
sense for this, right? So,
Yeah, the funding agency, the grant, I believe, was probably one of the state agency grants. So that's, of
Yeah.
course, why we have to be
Yeah.
super careful too,
right,
but
I think it is a part of the giving away, it's a part of the tree canopy program,
okay.
so, so then moving on, I think the last item we'll have some time for, hopefully have enough, is comp plan update stuff.
Yeah.
So,
We've got a
Adam?
PowerPoint and you also have the slides in front of you. So we'll give Janet a minute to do the PowerPoint. I just do want to say that the new business item that we're not going to get to today it is important because it's getting to be fall. It's going to be fall before we know it. And we've been talking about the, being able to have the city public works plant trees. We've talked about that location. So we'll make sure and make time for that next month too, because next month it's already gonna be September. It's gonna be time to plant those trees before we know it. I'm assuming that's what this planting site prioritization was about, right? Okay, good.
So so there's there's the site and the plan that we did a year ago, almost 6 months ago, right? It's like
mhm.
across Center Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that could happen would be a broader look. That's a lot of work. So,
Well, I mean, now hearing, we're hearing information that there are lots of trees that have died, and if we have any that are would be appropriate to replace,
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, that's something it seems like low hanging fruit to me.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And do something as the rainy season hits, because that's the ideal time to plant them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so what I've started us with is, so I know, we've talked about the code and the DMC, which is the code that comes after we get some goals and policies into the comprehensive plan, then we implement as a, action item through developing the code language. So what I'm looking for now is for us to really talk about the comprehensive plan. And so chapter 3, we'll just go right into it. Chapter 3 in the comprehensive plan is land use. And I looked through all of the way that the comprehensive plan does is it delineates these different village areas and has analysis about how much acreage is there, breaks it down into what types of uses are allowed within that village. And what I did is I went through and looked at how do we even talk about trees in our comprehensive plan at all? And it's, no surprise to you. I'm sure Bridget's brought this up before, but it's not much, right? We don't have much here, so we're going to have to really beef this up. But if you go to, so here in this first slide, these are the different areas: the historic Village, Palisade, DuPont Station, Yaley Park, Hoffman Hill, El Rancho, Edmond Village, Bell Hill, Civic Center, and Sequalichu Village. So those are these like defined areas that the comprehensive plan does analysis on each subset, and then, kind of the overall policy, general policy. But it's helpful because we can maybe look at tailoring tree goals and policies perhaps to these areas if we see that there's a benefit to that. So the first area, and so what I've done is provided you with, so you get some background. So the historic village, I think we all understand where that's located. And in the map here of the historic village, you can see that the light and the dark green are they're either open space or park lands. So, and those are city owned. We don't have in the historic village where it gives a description, it talks about goals and policies specific for a historic village. There is nothing there that talks about trees. I mean, like, it's no mention at all. So, I thought it might be helpful as we'll go through all of these, and then maybe depending on time, or maybe we just need to sort of think about it and come back. But, the knowledge that we have of the city itself and of these areas, and just, what we think would be an appropriate way to think about trees in these areas would be a good start. The next slide, there you go, you've already got it. The Palisade Village. So again, same thing, where you look at Palisade, you see all that green area, which is, open space or park. for Palisade, our comprehensive plan actually has it talks about trees. And I've pasted what all it says is that most of the public park space is dedicated to preserving natural spaces, especially in the northern portion of the village where Oregon white oaks are protected from development. So that is the only tree mention about the Palisade Village at all. Is just that there's some protected Oregon white oak trees. So again, lots of room for improvement there as we think about the trees and the neighborhood itself or village itself. Then we have the DuPont Station, and we have no mention of trees in the DuPont Station at all, which, you know, this is where we have our mixed use development area there and our commercial areas. So, you know, we know street trees are pretty important for these areas. I mean, they add a lot of benefit to getting people to want to stay in your commercial spaces, basically. And so I think it's important for us to think about how we want to address tree goals and policies there as well through the whole thing. Then you have Yaley, and this is the map of Yaley Village. And if you go to the next page, the plan talks about Yaley Village. It is known for its stand of Oregon white oaks. It talks about how the DuPont Powder Works Park was located specifically there to preserve the open prairie and the oak trees and to provide space for active recreation. It says the intention is to retain as many trees as possible, since oak savanna tree communities are rare in Washington state and there are only a limited number. To accomplish tree retention, sports fields and passive activity have been fit in among the oaks. I think this is like pretty weak, you know, in terms of the importance of.
Was there already though a governing tree retention ordinance or was there a separate, this is where I come to this and what was governing during the, like, was it development guide or is there somewhere else where they thought trees were covered or?
This is, okay, so this is the only thing that gives the city the ability to develop those codes.
Okay.
So the codes, yeah, there's what we have, and I think that explains why our tree preservation ordinance in the DMC is so weak, because we didn't have really much to be able to enact. It was all related to the new development at the time. You can see that the focus is simply on to be able to protect the oak, mainly the oak trees, as what's been talked about here in these areas. So it was, in my mind, very much an expression of the developer and what the developer wanted to do and needed to do, and sort of you know, how to do it in a way that wasn't how do I say this, recognized, or at least gave a nod that trees, the oak trees, are important. But it certainly doesn't talk about, you know, where we're moving now and where the state, you know, recognizes now. It's, yeah, the oak groves are important, but the tree canopy itself overall is something that we're really needing to have discussion about. And so, so that's, you know, that's all we have in Yaley. If you go on to Hoffman, Hoffman there's your Hoffman area for this village. And then the next slide talks about, again, how they've selected bands of trees and integrated them into the design of the neighborhood. This is one place where it actually talks about there's a natural amenity for the residents. And so trees are considered a natural amenity, so that's good. But just in Hoffman Hill, and I don't know why just Hoffman. And it goes into the slope. But retention, that last sentence, retention of trees on the bluff will continue to the north within Old Fort Lake. So it's kind of talking about the preservation of the trees on critical areas, on slopes is important. It doesn't really come out and say that, but that's what they mean. And that the trees, whoever, when they were developing Hoffman Hill, this understanding that, making sure that you have trees planted is part of the design, and the site plan is a good idea. So, I mean, it's something anyway. It's interesting to me that this didn't really seem to translate into the code that we have adopted. Maybe because I'm not sure why, but you would expect to see this sort of sentiment throughout all of these villages about the trees being an amenity for the residents, but it's only Hoffman. Then you go into the El Rancho Madrona, and of course, there's nothing here about trees. And Edmond Village, nothing. That's what Edmond Village is mapped there. Nothing there about trees. And Bell Hill. And then the Civic Center. So here again, we don't talk about trees when we describe these areas in our comp plan. We don't set it up for any kind of a, discussion about having goals and policies to protect them or why they're important or needed. Same goes for Sequalichu Village, which is the area that is the Cal Portland mine, which will eventually develop once the mine is finished and reclaimed. So that one could have a lot of impact because it is undeveloped right now, basically. And then what they call a manufacturing research park area. And we don't have any trees mentioned there. And the Old Fort Lake sub area, which is what we're working on right now, updating the land use and zoning there. We would anticipate again that the comprehensive plan that we're working on would describe these areas, would talk about the importance of the tree canopy, and maybe a little bit of information in these villages about what the tree life is like, so that we can then tailor how going forward we want to treat the trees in these areas, because they are specific development areas. They have little bit different characteristics. Then you go into, so all of that I showed you is describing these areas and what are they like and what do we want them to be like. And then you go into this goals and policies table in the comprehensive plan. And lo and behold, there is only one policy in the land use chapter, LU 4.3, that even mentions trees as an amenity and as part of the streetscape. So not even, pretty, yeah. So we can do a lot more. Then you have chapter 5. So I see chapter 3, the land use, is bringing you back quite a bit of red lines that we'll be adding tree language and suggesting some goals and policies. What I'll be looking to you for is kind of your local knowledge as you're driving around and what you think would be appropriate in terms of defining these areas, maybe by trees, or you may say, well, that area is doing pretty well for trees. Maybe it's an area where we want to look at more of a preservation of the existing, whereas there might be another village where you're going to say like, man, there's just it's like a dead zone, and we really need to tailor our policies in this village to be not just preservation because there's nothing to preserve, but you know, to be able to bolster some of that language about adding trees, maybe collaborating with whatever that's going to be. But that's sort of the detail of that I'd be looking for help because of your knowledge of these areas and your eye. I mean, you drive around, you look at trees and you think about trees. And so that'd be helpful.
Was there, may I ask,
Mhm.
was there incorporated into this microclimate studies or geological analysis of the alluvial nature of these areas? Because that will dictate what might do well there or what might not.
Nothing, but then if you go to, so you've got chapter 3 is land use. So that's where you're just talking about land use, site plan,
Right.
development. That's where we would look to be able to have, you know, zoning codes, development regulations, tree replacement, regulations, maybe when we get into this deeper discussion about how do we handle private property if we want to have.
And would that also work in chapter 5, are you discussing the natural environment?
Chapter 5 is another place. So land use is one where you're kind of looking at specific development. The natural environment, to your question, that's where we would want to start talking about, you know, soils, geology. That's where you find all of that in this chapter. And so, you know, that's where we, in the existing plan, you know, it really talks about tree importance, but it's more for just the animal and bird habitat. And so, you know, I could see where we might have a discussion about climate change here, air quality here,
Or if
water
you're doing, or if
quality.
you're doing preservation or even replanting, you need to know what you're dealing with from a
Yeah.
microclimate or soil situation
Right,
in those areas.
right.
I'm also thinking, I don't know how you tie it together. I have another group going on about blue zones
Uh-huh.
in DuPont. And also just same people kind of discussing the book, The Good Life. And there's this whole thing in there on all the people that did the tree research. But how, you know, this is all about people welfare in the end, as well as the fauna. Like, is there a way to bring? So the philosophy of Northwest Landing was neo-urbanism, which we have there's pros and cons to that now. Some cons have developed over time. But it works in Palisade Village. It has kind of worked. But what is the next philosophy for the town now? You know, if the next part's not gonna be Northwest Landing, I mean, I don't know if we've answered that question yet. And so what is its philosophy of, like, you know, and could it be a blue zone? Because the trees like rise in prominence to keeping us healthy, not just climate adaptation, but also health. And I'm thinking of that map that we used for the grant, that the health piece of it, you know, it's connected in there to the
Right.
health piece. And maybe there's a way to bring a health chapter or something into, I don't know.
Well, yeah, we have the planning commission, when they start their meeting tonight, working on the pillars of the guiding principles for the whole comp plan for the city. And health, well-being is one of those pillars. So it does all tie together. And so you're looking at this, you know, what kind of information do you put in each chapter and how does it all work together in a synergistic way for the comprehensive good, right? To take care of all of these, to be thinking of all of these different things in these different chapters. So, the natural environment, I mean, again, we know that trees are, yes, they're very important. So, you know, I've pasted the 2 policies that protecting and retaining significant trees in public and privately dedicated areas. Well, I mean, we're only talking here about significant trees.
What is
Right.
this, significant trees and.
It's subjective. That's a very subjective.
The significant trees are defined in code.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and,
it says retain significant trees and vegetation,
mhm,
but that's pretty nebulous. It's
Right.
all facts.
right,
Right.
That would be something to.
it's definitely something.
It's an eye of
and-
the beholder sort of thing.
And so then the, this Annie 4.3, which actually, this doesn't belong in chapter 5. In my mind, it should actually be in chapter 3, because that's where we're talking more about development and land use for grading. And so then chapter 6, which we've talked about, is another chapter. So these are the three I've identified, these 3 chapters that I think it's critically important for us to import tree language. And so cultural, resources and historic preservation, we know that, culturally modified trees, we've talked about that. There may be other, and I think the tribe can help us here, because there may be trees to them that are not just the modified ones, but maybe other trees that we could think about being important for, for the historical and cultural context. I don't know that for sure, but I just kind of did this audit to be like, okay, this is where our starting point is pretty weak. And so what, the 2 things, one would be for you again to kind of make notes until we meet again about these specific villages using these maps. Make yourself notes about like, well, hey, this is whatever the case may be, because that's going to help us develop goals and policies for these areas. And then the other thing, which I just forgot what I was going to say. Darn it.
So my
Completely.
takeaway is the thing that would be great and helpful for you is if each of us like visited each neighborhood.
Yeah,
Took a look around and said, what are the dominant tree species here? This is what I see.
yeah.
Whether it's like a really dry area or a wetter area.
Mm-hmm.
Craft some words for that and say, okay, if I was gonna add tree canopy here, where exactly would I put it? And what kind of trees should we plant?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my takeaway. from-
That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing, phew, I remembered it. And then doing that homework, but then also if you have time, to just sort of, Alex, Chair Cheney, you sent that King County report a while back, which was great. And that was all focusing on the regulations, the regulatory side. It was great. But I think also if we could look at some of the other comprehensive plans, other places where we might, if you find some goals or policies that you think would be really good for us to consider, then we have, I'm sure there's lots of good language out there. We don't have to reinvent it. So
Yeah.
I'll be looking for that to bring forward at the next meeting. But if you have a chance or you're reading somebody else's comp plan for some reason, and you're like, wow, that's a good one. Let's just come together with those and see what we can do.
And so I've looked before, I didn't find a lot, I sent you some.
Mhm.
All the other members here, if
Yes.
you see something. And you want to send it to Barb directly right away, please do
Sure.
so. And then if you want to discuss it further in the meeting, you can do that. If you can send it to her sooner, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Chairman King, you had started you've got these sticky notes on which
This is just, so as part of that other work we did was just tracking all of the things that I thought might have teeth, again, which is what I'm interested in. And there were so many, and I think some of them are overlapping. We've referred to them different ways. And so, yeah, I can type up, again, this was a working document. We have the comprehensive plan we're looking at now, but there was, so these were just things that I had made, and I know they're connected to documents, but we don't have a list of the documents. So there was protected trees document, there was, the tree care manual, shoreline master plan. There were DMC numbers, right-of-way regulations, tree restoration code. I mean, it just went on. So these are the things I've heard over the last 18 months. And I'm like, these are just the ones we have where trees are mentioned. And so, is there a like tree list of documents? Cause what I really, there's
No.
there's the WUI, there's, I mean, there's trees mentioned all over the place.
Right.
And it's like, how do you,
How you do it is start with what we're starting with.
okay,
Because everything bleeds out from this work.
okay.
So the shoreline master plan will have to be updated. And it will, it'll be a similar exercise, but where you're doing goals and policies, traditionally, you're gonna look at what we have, what we get through to council for adoption in the comprehensive plan. You're wanting to have everything be really consistent as you're working through. So the WUI is something that is, I think we're gonna want to talk about it in our comprehensive plan because that's
Mhm.
important in terms of the defensible space, the wild, the fire hazard. So all of these things are, we have an Oak Grove mapping unit map that's in like pen and ink and so we've got a lot of those pieces like you're pointing out to pull together, but the ground zero is this language here. Yeah.
Okay, so we are just about out of time, so we're gonna skip over the new business. I would like to just recap, so next meeting, we will have our concept flow charts. We'll work on that a lot. We'll touch on, hopefully the city has our required legal language for our tree adoption. Hopefully that's pretty quick. And then we, to the extent we can go visit the neighborhoods and have some feedback.
Are we dividing that up, the neighborhoods?
I don't think. I could go visit all of
Yes.
them. Do we
Yes.
need to divide them up?
Well, I don't know. Do we all need to look at all the neighborhoods or
We
would
may have
we,
different
each of us?
Pace.
All right.
Yeah, we might have to,
So I'll
so you
just
don't
look
have
at-
to, you don't have to go to all of them, but go to
Okay, I was just gonna get
as many. as
clarity on
you-
what,
Yeah, I don't think we need to formally divide them up
okay.
at this point. And then, are there any announcements, from members or raise your hand if you have something? Oh, yes, Bridget.
So on the Tree Link newsletter this month was about drought and tree stress. And I think, I was trying to find it. I think there's a webinar coming. But there are all kinds of stuff happening on there about urban forest and things like that. But it did specifically address drought. And I was making a note to look at that before I chaired the market this week. People want to talk about it. But yeah. That's it.
Seeing no other hands, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.